After a year in Japan, let me unveil the unexpected layers of my journey. Brace yourself, the reality doesn't always match the visions you might have. Join me for a roller coaster of experiences showcasing the sometimes fantastic, sometimes disappointing, but often humorous contrasts between my Japan expectations and the fascinating reality. Get ready for an insider's look into the land of the rising sun, where every day holds a surprise. My Japanese journey began in Kyoto, a city that captured the essence I crave from anime like Bleach and movies like Spirited Away. Exploring the city for 2 days, I was impressed by how well Kyoto matched my expectations. Climbing the Fushimi Inari Shrine's thousands of steps felt like traversing a mountain in a samurai training montage. And visiting traditional shops filled with katanas and armor transported me back in time. The city's charm with its blend of historic architecture and modern life solidified my desire to return and continue exploring its captivating streets. The transition to Tokyo, however, was a different experience. While the city's vibrant energy and neon-lit streets initially impressed me, there was an underlying sense of, is this it? That I couldn't shake. Similar to the advice of not meeting your heroes, I found myself slightly deflated. While I enjoyed exploring Shinjuku and seeing the sights I'd watched in travel vlogs, Tokyo, like other major cities such as Paris and London, didn't entirely match the romanticized picture I'd envisioned. Visiting the Square Enix cafe in Akihabara further highlighted this. The space was smaller than expected and the merchandise availability was limited. It became clear that my preconceived notions of Tokyo were romanticized and the reality was similar to my experiences in other major cities. However, given the choice, Tokyo would still be my pick due to its unique offerings. Exploring massive stores like Yodobashi and Bic Camera, despite not fulfilling my initial expectations, provided a different kind of experience. Perhaps these contrasts taught me a valuable lesson that true happiness lies not in material possessions, but in experiences and the connections we make, and it also sets a precedence for things to come during my first year in Japan. Having arrived in Hokkaido after the mini holiday, it was time for my wife and I to start settling in. As I've mentioned in a previous video, the snow-covered winter wonderland was amazing and immediately met my expectations of what I thought Hokkaido would be like. Considering I saw the ground from the plane window, I'd never seen so much snow before and I was rapt. Now that I had situated myself, I now had to put my serious hat on and start organising myself, along with purchasing furniture and electronics that would be used for my day-to-day activities. Unsurprisingly, after acquiring what I needed, much of my initial savings were exhausted, and it was time to start thinking about work. Before looking for work, I was under the impression that I needed a TESOL certificate in order to teach English online. But little did I know that my university degree would be enough. Having searched various forums and websites about the average amount a person can earn when teaching English online, I was under the illusion that I would be paid around double the 10 USD I'm currently paid per hour. Whilst the revelation of being able to start work sooner was a welcome discovery, the reduction in expected income definitely wasn't. To further add insult to injury, before moving into my mother-in-law's house, I was assured that there would be a stable internet connection. This couldn't have been further from the truth. Due to the fact that I was living on the outskirts of a semi-rural town, the only internet available was through a 4G modem. When the connection was stable, the speeds were reasonable, but the internet would often drop out, and this would have been unacceptable when trying to teach students online. And it would have likely resulted in me being booted off the service. I came to Japan with the expectation that it would strengthen my relationship with my wife and allow us to spend more time together. After the first month, my wife had to start work, and I was left at home to my own devices. I was lonely, with no job and unable to speak the language. It was also about a 20-minute train ride into the bigger city, but I would have to spend money that I couldn't afford to spend just for the transit. At the end of each day, like a dog waiting to see its owner, I couldn't wait to see my wife, and I also wanted her to take me out somewhere. My wife's workplace was around 40 minutes drive away, and considering she had just started training, the two factors made her feel exhausted. The last thing she wanted was to give me the attention that I wanted and to once again have to drive more. This put some serious pressure on the relationship and resulted in the biggest argument we had ever had, and it almost threatened to kick the whole fucking apple cart over. I was sick to the stomach. It was literally only 1 month after coming to the country, and my expectations of a better life were in serious hot water. Fortunately, after counsel and guidance from both our parents, in time I started to pull my finger out more, considering that was also one of the reasons why my wife was not happy, and in time things began to improve. I love my mother-in-law and her boyfriend, but I'd be lying if I said that I didn't feel more pressure living under their roof in the few months that we lived with them. This feeling of pressure was not brought about by anything that they said, but if you've ever lived with your in-laws, there's always a nagging feeling of having to do better, as in a way you're always under their scope, even in a subconscious capacity. I also thought that my wife and I would do far more travelling in the first month, but due to money constraints and my wife not having a car until a week before her starting work, we spent much of the time at home stuck in the house. This was not what I envisioned before coming to the country. Talking about the unexpected, I never expected to have a big accident when coming to Japan by going arse over tit on my handlebars of my bike and fracturing my ribs and breaking my finger. Being in a situation of danger, not being able to speak the language, added a whole other level of fright, especially when after winding myself, I thought my lungs had collapsed. Again, you can hear more about this by looking at my first 6 months in Japan playlist. It wasn't until my wife and I moved to the bigger city that things began to settle down a bit. By this point, my injuries had healed and I now had access to one of the best internet speeds I've ever experienced in my life. And I assumed I would now be able to start work, but surprise, surprise, we had moved out of home during September, and whilst I'd expected the Hokkaido summer to be milder than what I was used to in Australia, I was really not prepared for the temperatures that I would have to endure. Some days the temperature was above 30 centigrade and felt worse due to the added humidity. We had no air conditioning unit in the house, and so I had to resort to using Velcro ice packs to put around my neck. This is probably the first time I have genuinely felt perpetually ill on a daily basis due to the level of heat. I went to the local gym to try and escape the heat during the day, but when I came back home, it was like a sauna all over again. I spent much of the time having to lie down, not move, with a powerful fan blasting at me just to get some respite. There was no way I would have been able to work in this temperature, as turning my computer on with my big monitors would have just amplified the heat inside my room. Once the month shifted into October, things really began to change, in more ways than one. I was finally able to start working in the house as the temperature had become bearable, and something unexpected came my way. During the early months of living in Hokkaido, I'd be introduced and met my first Japanese friend, who you will have seen in some of my videos. Aki helped me emotionally and has also spoilt me by taking me places since we met for the first time. What's even more unexpected is that Aki will turn 70 this year, making him more than twice my age. Aki is a professional winemaker, and in October he invited me to the Takachi Wine Castle Grape Harvest event. During the event, I was able to pick grapes, and at the end of the day, I was awarded 2 bottles of red wine from the winery. I would have never dreamt that I would be one day picking grapes in a vineyard, let alone in Japan. That day, I was also treated to ramen by Aki and his tennis club peers, and afterwards I assisted the gents in picking grapes at their local club called the Bacchus Tennis Group. In terms of my expectations and in contrast to this, I thought I would have been able to do far more travelling prior to my arrival in Japan. But due to the size, cost and transport logistics of living in Hokkaido, my expectations are a bit too high. However, in the same vein of the comparison between Kyoto and Tokyo, Japan has not entirely lived up to my expectation, but that's okay because other experiences have replaced these expectations. And to be fair, I think the grape harvest opportunity ended up being far more valuable than I would have experienced if I had simply travelled to a location on my own. I was able to see the unfiltered side of the Japanese people and share a rustic experience with them, and for that I'm truly grateful. Many people envision Japan as being this technological, seamless wonderland. At least that was my expectation. A few months after the grape harvest experience, I needed to organise a bank account for my work funds to go to. Now you're probably thinking, why didn't I have a bank account already? Well, unbeknownst to me, Due to the fact that I was on a spousal visa, I had to wait until I had been in the country for 6 months before being eligible for a bank account. And in order to set the bank account up, the bank asks more questions than I had been used to in Australia. Prior to coming to Japan, I thought this process was going to be much easier. But at the time of confirming my details from a letter my bank had sent me, I tried to call the number on the piece of paper, thinking that it was the phone number to Sony Bank. Google Translate said something like member call number, so it makes sense that could be misconstrued. The first digits of the number started with 110. I called the number and a man answered. I was quite surprised by the speed in which they answered the phone. There's me thinking, fucking hell, Sony Bank's on the money. The person on the other end couldn't speak English, and after mentioning Sony Bank, they asked me to hold and transferred me to what I thought would be another department. Well, bloody hell, I was embarrassed. The person on the other end was livid. I had only gone and accidentally called the police emergency services number. The person on the other end sounded like a character I have seen out of a Takeshi Kitano film. He was really condescending and he was so pissed off. I apologised, hung up the phone, and then I began shitting myself. What if they come banging on the door and want to start questioning me? Not that I have anything to hide, but who likes being questioned by the police? Fortunately, I have a bank account now. It wasn't much longer until once again snow started to fall, and my dream of living in a country where snow was a common occurrence was fulfilled. In my mind, I thought I would be going out for more walks through the blanketed winter wonderland, but I was completely not prepared for the prospect of going arse over tits on more than one occasion. With snow and the cold comes ice, and whilst I'm a bit better at walking on it, I must have looked like a complete twat trying to keep myself from face planting on the cold, hard ground. Also, because of the snow and ice, it's even harder to meet up with my foreign friends, even on the limited occasions that we do meet up. That was another expectation I had, in that I thought I'd be going out for drinks with them at least once a month. But due to their family commitments, lack of funds, or because some of them are also teachers, it can be hard to convene on a suitable time to meet up with one another. So you might be wondering, what do I do when I'm not spending time with my friends? Which brings me to another misjudged expectation. I honestly thought making content and attracting viewers was going to be a bit easier than the lived experience. In a similar frame with regard to the difficulty of YouTube, I genuinely thought earning a living teaching online would have been more lucrative than it has been, and I hope that in time I can improve my situation for me, my wife, my family, especially considering I said I would go back once a year to visit my parents, where I can't actually afford it this year. I also hope that my channel grows and that I can continue to grow as a person with all factors considered. Whilst Japan has not entirely met my expectations, it has confused and delighted me in other ways that I would have never thought of. And for that, I'm truly grateful. What preconceived ideas do you have about coming or living to Japan? Or if you already live in Japan, let me know in the comments if the land of the rising sun met your expectations. Thank you for watching the video about my 1-year anniversary of living in Japan. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you'll enjoy watching one of my other videos shown down here. Thank you again, bye for now.